Okay. Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? We are here today with Chris and Joe. And first off, I just want to welcome everybody. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Friday. Hi Tina. Hi Toby. Hi Brent. Carolyn Black. Jim is in here as well. And obviously CWL and Joe in Alaska is on with me. Hope you guys are doing well. Carolyn Black is from Nova Scotia, Canada. Way to represent. Yep. All right, all right. So what we're gonna do today is I'm no. Stay in one. You're good in one. Don't change to two because then we. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you not hear us? We can hear you loud and clear. Loud and clear. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Do you want to, Joe, do you mind jumping into chat room too? I don't know why he can't hear us. Joe?
Yep.
Okay, I can join chat room too.
Okay, let's do that. All right, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Oh, so you're formerly from Ontario. All right. Cool. Had two run-ins with Bigfoot, one in Ontario and one in Quebec. Carolyn, send it in. Send it in so we can see and hear your encounter. All right. So again, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have, okay, Chris is still in chat room 1. Not sure why he's still in there. But so we're having issues. He's having issues hearing us. But I'm guessing you guys are hearing us just fine. Am I too loud? Can you guys let me know if I'm too loud? You hear someone? I hope you're hearing me.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you too, Joe. I'm just gonna. Can you speak again? I want to hear how loud you are.
Yeah,
Joe.
sure. Is this okay? Or...
Yeah, I'm just gonna turn you up ever so slightly. Okay.
I do have gain on this.
All right. Okay, so why don't we get started here? Not too loud. Okay, that's good. And thank you, Carolyn. Sounds great. Okay, sounds like we can get started. So, Chris is still in the wrong chat room. He said he was going to jump in. Here, let me send Chris a quick message. Okay, I'm going to start off with you, Joe. So what we're going to do is, as you know, not everybody who comes onto this channel believe in the same stuff. In fact, you'll be surprised how many people actually don't believe that Bigfoot is real, right? And some folks don't believe that paranormals are real, or some people don't believe that aliens or UFOs exist, that sort of thing. So we're going to sort of touch on all these different avenues, and I'm going to get you guys to ask questions as we go along, and then we will ask Joe and Chris these questions. So both have different experiences, and both of these lovely fellas submitted their stories to the channel. So I have said their stories before. Okay, hold on just a sec here, because he's trying to call me now. Join chat room 2. Okay, I'm not sure what is going on. He can't seem to get back in. Chris, can you hear? I know you're on here, Chris. Chris, hold on one second. I'm just gonna again send him a message. Anyway, so yeah, so we're gonna start off. I'll tell you what. While I'm getting Chris in here, why don't you start us off, Joe? So can you sort of share your beliefs and give the audience a little bit about what you've encountered?
Oh, sure. My beliefs are that they've actually come to the conclusion that I don't believe everything. I don't believe anything is paranormal. I think it's all normal. We just don't understand it yet. So it's kind of, religion and science mixed together. What have I seen as a kid? I didn't tell anybody this on this channel, but I used to be followed. I hunted and fished a lot, and I walked through this old growth forest to hunt a lot. And I would get followed, and I couldn't find out, no matter how hard I tried, I could not find out who it was. So it became normal. And when I hunted with people, they would be totally freaked by it.
Hmm.
Uh, that was when I was a kid. And
Wow.
then, let's see, you want me to go into when I was an adult or?
Yeah. Mosey on in until you were an adult, and then we'll ask Chris the same question.
Sure. So the next one that well, it didn't bother me per se, but it scared me really bad. It's the most scared I've ever been in my life. Was when I was in the service. And I was doing a security check on a conventional weapon storage area on Barksdale Air Force Base. And as I drove my truck in, opened the gate, uh, it seemed to get more and more rainy and misty. It wasn't really raining. It was more mist and fog. And I started getting this creepy feeling, which, I like the area. Nobody could get in there but me, and I enjoyed the check. So I'm cruising down, checking these bunkers with a spotlight, and the fog's getting heavier and heavier, and it's like the fog has terror in it. So the deeper I go into this, the more terrorized I am. And I make it back, I'm just completely freaked. By this time, I'm still able to do my job. But so I get out of this truck and I carried something called a GAU-5, which is a M4 for those who are used to those. And I carried a Beretta M9. And I made sure that they were, ready. And I jacked around in my GAU-5. And of course, I wasn't supposed to, but I'm not going to follow the rules in that situation. So anyway, I get to the back of the bunker and I get to the new ones. And I'm really creeped out. So I can't see anything by this time hardly. So I have to pull right up on the bunkers. And I see all the locks cut off and laying on the ground. So I call it in, tell them I need backup and I have to clear these bunkers. And I felt very, very watched and creeped out. It was like somebody there and I couldn't see them. So I got out of the truck and went behind a tree and sat there for a while waiting for dispatch to send backup. And because of the night, I wasn't allowed to get backup. It was January 21st, I believe, of 2000. No, I'm sorry, 1991. It was the beginning of Gulf War, the first Gulf War. And we had situations going on where that was more important than one airman needing backup. So I didn't get it. So what I did is I just cleared the bunkers and realized that they were all gone, everything was completely gone. And that basically enemy combatants or terrorists wouldn't do that and couldn't do that. They would leave stuff behind. So I call dispatch and I tell them I'm clear. I'm going to return to base. And I start coming out of the area and I get to this gate I have to open. And I go to, I unlock the gate because it's got a chain and padlock. And I go to pull this thing open and it's like welded shut. It would not move. And I'm like, what is going on? So I walked to the back of the truck, kind of looked around. I even spoke out because it was so creepy. It was like this thing was right next to me. And I hollered out, is there anyone there? And nobody. So I go over and try to open the thing again, and it's stuck. And I've never heard of this gate stuck. So this thing I couldn't see seemed to get closer and closer, and it was more and more terrorizing. So what I did is I prayed and I asked for help, and I didn't get any. So I turned to this entity, I believe it was where it was, and I said, would you please let me go? And it was like it wasn't angry anymore. And I turned and opened the gate easily, drove my truck through it, shut the gate. Well, I had to walk back into the area, shut the gate, lock the fence up, make sure everything was right, and then I left through a passenger gate, which is off to the right side. And it was the same deal. This one had a key, and I stick a key in there and go to turn it. It's frozen. It will not move. You know, I break the dang key off. It was a big key, but so this thing feels like in the service we have this thing called heel to toe, and that's how you stack people. So I felt like this guy was heel to toe with me. His toes were right on my heels. So I turned around again and I said, would you please just let me leave? And I turned back and the thing unlocked and I walked through and locked it back up. And I went over to my truck and I took out the magazine of my weapon and, you know, jacked out the round, put it back in my mag. I'm going to start my day again. And I felt like this thing was just absolutely angry and totally evil. And it was glaring at me from the inside of this conventional weapon storage area, fenced in area. So I walked back up to the fence and I said, thank you for allowing me to leave. And it was like all the anger's gone, and I could feel this entity slide back in towards the bunkers that I had just cleared. So when I get back to the base, my flight chief's gone, so I have to report into the day shift flight chief. And I walk in expecting him to ask questions about these bunkers because it's incredibly unusual. And I knock on the door. He says, enter. I go in. He says, did you see it? And I said, yes, sir. I saw the bunkers open. He's like, no. Did you see the entity?
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, no. I felt it. And he said, you will never go into the CAS area alone again. That's a lawful order. If you are ordered to do so, discreetly tell dispatch, you can't, by my order. The other thing is, during that incident, I lost 4 hours of time.
Wow.
And that's the end of that one.
Okay. Chris, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to let everybody know your experiences that you've had so far?
So far, you read my encounter about the guns and seeing that vaporish entity walk through the house whenever we was all eating supper. Then years later, whenever I worked in Wyoming, that's like the creepiest environment I ever lived in. Because the whole place had a lot of unexpected deaths, like people would die mysteriously. Like like we had one, like all the people that died previously, several of them died of a heart attack. Some of them got struck by lightning. One of them was running traps and ended up stepping in his own trap and succumbing to a blood poisoning. And like the year or two before I went up there, a veterinarian had a four-wheeler accident and flipped over on him on his way to the ranch. And there was a little memorial on the driveway dedicated to that veterinarian. I can't remember his name. But anywho, up there, I always felt like I was being watched. I mean, especially after dark. And I just summed it up to it just being a new environment, never being there before. Plus, I'm 3/4 chicken squat anyway, especially after dark, and just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the yard from the bunkhouse to the shower house. It just would creep me out to the point to where I'd try to take a shower during the daytime where I didn't have to be caught out after dark. It's just creepy. And I finally mentioned something to my boss about it, and he called this fellow by name, and he said, well, he died playing cards. And they didn't find his body till the next spring in the upstairs of the house that he was living in. And I'm like, man, surely that'd have stunk or something. He said, no, we left the house to go to town because we vacated the ranch that time during the winter. So he stayed up there all winter and decomposed. And he said, it's probably him watching you.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, whatever, bub. Kind of wish you told me this whenever you was hiring me, because I may not have showed up. And that one corner, Okoka's Corner, was named after a Bass sheep herder, and it had his name carved in a big aspen tree. That's why it's called Coca's Corner. And I hated going there because everything was amplified 10 times whenever I was there. I mean, I felt like I was being dogged. I mean, it felt like something was looking over my shoulder all the time. And I asked my buddy who I was working there, I'm like, hey, you feel this too? He's like, yeah. I didn't want to mention it because I don't want you to call me a chicken shit. I said, I don't care you call me a chicken shit. I said, this is how I'm feeling. And I said, I don't like being here by myself. Well, I ended up having to go there to let down the snow fences by myself. And being alone, really, I mean, I was there by myself. Something was to happen. I just been c'est la vie, you know, but I just felt like I was being dogged. And I'm letting these fences down, and there's about 6 miles of this fence I've got to let down. So I started at the furthest point, letting these fences down, walking my way back to the truck, and it just kept on like this fear, like this primal fear. And I was looking around. I'm like, man, I don't have a gun. I got a pocket knife. By golly, I want to go down swinging. And then that's whenever I heard the tree knocks. And I'm like, okay, I want to say that that's an elk or a moose. Going to try to find, use my logic to keep me from being chicken shit and going. Because I really bad wanted to just say, screw it, and just lie to the boss, yeah, I done it. Only I didn't do it. But I'm like, no, I'm getting paid to do this. I want to finish the job. And I heard the tree knocks twice. And each time I turned around, didn't see nothing, but it's real thick. I mean, you couldn't see 10 feet into that thick forest. I got all that done and let the fences down. And I returned unscathed to back to the headquarters, to the ranch house. Boss asked me, did you get it done? Yeah. He said, okay. Well, the next, 2 days later, I had to go back to Coca's Corner. And I'm like, crap. And this time here, I'm going to be on horseback. And instead of going directly to Coca's Corner, I was skirted north to ride in at it on an angle. And this time here, I borrowed my Chuck's 357 pistol. Because I'm like, I'm going to at least make a final stand. And the road way back through Coca's Corner and up to the mountain. And the whole time I'm getting creeped out. I mean, even my horse is like wanting to go back home. And he was bulletproof. And get through that and got really creeped out. I mean, to the point where I was shaking with this primal fear. Go throughout the day. The next morning, I told my boss, I finally broke my silence, and I'm like, hey, this is where I went. This is how I felt. And he's like, another 300 yards. He said, you'd have rode 300 more yards. He said, you come to a clearing. And he said, that clearing was the site of a native massacre. He said, right after the 7th Cavalry, he said, the cavalry is out for blood. And he said, they found this little retirement village and killed them all. I'm like, oh, so that could be the creepy feeling that I've been feeling. All right, that makes sense. And I kind of put that behind me. And then about a week after that is whenever I was in the clearing. And I was about a half mile from the bunkhouse and I was looking for moose sheds. And that's whenever I could sort of feeling like, okay, I'm being watched. Then I smelt that funny, bad odor. And I'm like, whatever it is trying to get behind me. So I started making my way off the side of the mountains. And I was on foot. Didn't have a cell phone. Cell phone didn't work there. And that's whenever I heard the twig snap, and I'm like, man, I'm not going to become bear poop. I'm headed back to the bunkhouse. And I didn't tell my buddy till the next day on what had happened. And he's like, it probably encountered a bear. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Bear, whatever you say. And fast forward a few years. Oh, and we had two hunters come up missing whenever I was in Wyoming. They found one, but they didn't find the other one. And that one that's still missing has been covered by, for sure, one other YouTuber. And that was less than 5 miles away from that clearing that I had that where I encountered the bad smell. And they didn't find him. They found his rifle and his binoculars, I think, but they never found him. And I mean, he just like disappeared. But then that's been pretty much well it, besides the sleep paralysis.
Yeah, and we'll get into that one a little later. So, question
Okay.
for both of you. Do you, and you can, I guess, Chris, you answer first, and then Joe can answer second. Do you guys believe in Bigfoot? Chris, you can answer first.
I believe there's something out there.
Okay, something like a big hairy man that lives in the wild.
That's yeah. Yeah, I'll go ahead and say yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something out there. I mean, and it's just too consequential for people just to be disappeared, just without a trace. There's something not to be out there.
Okay, now you're bringing up something I'm going to touch on. I'm just writing that down so I remember. Okay, so you believe there's something out there, but you're not calling it a name. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Joe,
not going to label it.
okay, Joe, what's your take? Do you believe Bigfoot, Sasquatch are real or not real?
Well, I didn't believe them until I saw one walk in front of my truck, and I run with me.
Right. So that was in Alaska, right? Like when you was mistaking a stump, I believe. You thought you were looking at a stump. Is that correct?
I've seen 3 weird things out here.
Okay.
I can explain if you want.
Sure. Go for it.
Right. So the first one, a friend of mine and I were cruising back roads in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park. It's the biggest national park in the United States. It's like 13 million acres. So it's huge. Some of the roughest country in the world. Anyway, so I'm going up towards the toe of the Root Glacier. You guys can look it up. And just before I hit the clearing in the area, I got an ice cream headache and something popped into my head and it said Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And sure enough, something walked behind a small hill, and the guy I'm with and I saw the head glide along. A bear walks with its head usually down, and they don't walk smoothly. Humans don't walk smoothly like that.
Yeah,
It's
we
like things
bob.
on.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. So anyway, this thing goes across the road, and I tell my buddy, hey man, don't shut the door too hard. We're going to go look for this thing. I said, I want to see it. I don't know what it is. I still couldn't believe, I didn't know what it was. I figured it was a wounded bear walking upright. So the guy gets out, and I said, hey, go down about 60 yards. Don't slam your door. And go into the bush. And when you go in, then I'll go in a few seconds later. So I saw him go in, and then I went in. And as I walked in, I panned from left to right, saw my buddy, and I saw he made a weird noise as I looked away. And I looked back towards him, and there was a Sasquatch standing in the sunlight, not 40 yards from me. I could have hit it with a bow and arrow or a rock. And there is no doubt in my mind it's a Sasquatch. It
Describe it.
was looking, it was completely hairy. It was 6'5" about, had a good build, narrow hips like a V. Its shoulders were probably 3 feet wide. It wasn't completely ripped like a bodybuilder. Its hair was probably
Sorry,
3 inches.
did you say it was or it wasn't?
It was not.
It was not. Okay.
No, it was more like a basketball player.
Okay.
Its hair was 3-4 inches long all over. There was no, additional hair length that I saw. This thing was extremely well manicured, very well taken care of, apparently. And it was quartering away from me from the left, meaning I could see its left shoulder clearly, and the back of it, and its left arm, and sometimes its right arm. And then it kind of glanced at me real quick. I didn't see its face, but I saw its eyeball. And its eye was yellow or golden. And we were in the sunlight, and his eye, or whatever, I don't know if it's a male or female, but the pupil was blown out, massive. It reminded me of an owl at night, or maybe a cat when it gets upset. The eye comes over and it opens up like that. And then this thing took off, and it went from 0 to probably 60 miles an hour instantly, and ran and jumped over some logs and rocks or whatever, mostly fallen trees, and then it was gone.
So getting back to what Chris mentioned previously about disappearances and people going missing in the woods, do you believe some of that could be contributed to the wild man of the forest?
Yes. I think they're people, and there are good people, and there are not so good people, and then there are evil people. And I believe that they're the same way. There's a habit of people in Alaska shooting at these things or shooting them. Well, I've been shot at, and it's not very pleasant. So I believe that's really a bad idea. I've never shot at one. One thing I did skip when I saw the one clearly in sunshine is I had a 10 millimeter on my chest, SIG, and I pulled it thing because I thought it was a bear. It was the same color as a brown bear. And when I pulled that and I looked and I realized it was a human, I didn't point it at it and I put it away. It is a human. That's what my brain said. So, that's probably the best I can do on the answer.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the disappearance of people are due to the wild hairy man of the forest?
Some of them, yes, and some of them are people who, want to end stuff on their own terms. There's always, there's any number of things that can go wrong whenever you're alone in the woods. That's why even now being 40, I will at least let one of my parents or somebody trustworthy know this is where I'm going to be, and this is how long I'm going to be gone. This is the route I'm going to take coming back, to where if I'm not here at this designated time, give me a little bit just in case, I had a flat or I got sidetracked or, something may have come up, but within a certain amount of time, you backtrack and this is where I'm going to be. And a lot of people don't do that. And and then they end up paying for it. I mean, and I'm a firm believer, if you're allowed to carry a firearm. It's like I've told several people, they come, I'd much rather be judged by a jury of 12 than be carried by 6.
Yeah, up here we
And I'm
cannot.
big.
Up here we can't carry. Well, unless you're hunting, but you can't just have arms on you. You can't walk around with a gun concealed or anything like that. You can't do that.
See here, we can carry guns as long as you're not a convicted felon. We have open carry across the board. As long as you're over 21 and you're not a convicted felon, you can carry openly.
And you're in
And
Oklahoma,
that,
right?
yeah, last weekend, last weekend I went to the grocery store, and the guy in front of me, the two men in front of me, both had sidearms. And I know that some people do get creeped out by it. I don't, because I was raised around them. But
Yeah.
it does unnerve people who come from different areas, and then they come here and they're like, man, are they law enforcement? Nope. It's just Jim.
Yeah, that would definitely creep me out because, we're not used to seeing guns here. So that would not be, I don't know. It'd be awkward, I think. Okay. The other question I wanted to ask you guys, we're still sticking around the whole wild, hairy men of the forest. Do you think that they are have any sort of special abilities? And Chris, you can go first this time.
As far as not mine speak, I don't. This is just my personal belief, so nobody get mad. This is just my opinion. I don't think so. I don't think so. But that's just me. I've not had an encounter with them to where they're telling me, where they know something about me and mine project, something that only I would know.
Mm.
But until then, my answer is going to be, I don't think so.
Okay. And Joe?
If I go from personal experience, I haven't seen any. The only thing I've seen is the supernatural speed they run at. Oh, and I did see a stump, and I'm not sure if that fits in. So, to make a long story short, I saw a stump, and then it disappeared. So I assume it was something. I can't tell you it was a Sasquatch, but something vanished.
Okay, so now I'm going to take it a little bit further out there. Do you think there's a connection between UFOs and Sasquatch?
For me,
Do you think there is a connection between UFOs and Sasquatch?
well, I do, yeah. People who, because of the testimony of everybody else. I mean, you got to acknowledge what people are saying. It's not really a belief, it's an acknowledgement. So, yes.
All right. By the way, if you guys have any questions for Joe or Chris, let us know while we're on this particular subject. And Chris, what's your view on that?
Yes. I don't think so. I think that UFOs are something completely different, and I think that Sasquatch is of this planet. Because my opinion is, if he could teleport from here to the mothership, why would he need to eat us whenever he could teleport to the mothership and get him a ham sandwich?
Oh, so you think he's eating us, Chris?
Uh, I talked to a Cherokee. I used to be friends and part of a family with these Cherokee people, and I asked them about different stuff, and I was dating one of their I was dating a daughter, the one that I got a lot of information from, And I told him, I'm like, man, I know I don't want you to think I'm being bigoted or anything. I said, but I'm like, I have a lot of questions. And he's like, ask them. Just put them out and ask them. I'm like, Bigfoot. And he told me what he thought. He said, we talked. He said, the elders growing up, they talked about these wood boogers, timber boogers. They call them something else, and I can't remember. I can't even pronounce it properly anyway. He said that it's kind of like a cautionary tale, like the boogeyman. Don't go out by yourself after dark. Don't go to certain areas after dark. Show everything in the natural world respect, or this will get you. And he told me a story that happened to somebody that he knew whenever he was a young man. And he was born in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He said that he didn't speak any English until he started kindergarten. So he spoke Cherokee. And he's fluent in Cherokee and English. And he said that whenever he was about 12, before his family had moved from the mountain into town, that there was a young girl that he was raised with. He said one night she just disappeared. I'm like, what happened? He said, we have no idea. He said that where they lived, and they said it was a long walk from their house to the outhouse. And he said it was way further than what needed to have been. And she had to go answer nature's call, and she's about 12. And he said that she went out to use the outhouse and she never come back. Well, after about 10, 15, 20 minutes, her dad got worried and started, went and looked for her. He, no trace of her, no nothing. So as any parent would do, he started freaking out. So he sends word to get people there to help him look. So they looked all night, couldn't find her. Next day, looked for her. Sheriff got involved. She just, there was no sign of her. He said that they never found a trace of her anywhere. No bones, no nothing. And he said it just like she just either walked off or something picked her up and walked off with her. And he said that therefore a long time, that's what everybody said it was, is this timber booger, whatever they called it, got her. And then he said there's been legends of the old where, maidens being taken, be about 13, 14, about the time that women mature in that area. He said they end up disappearing. And Charlie never lied to me. I never lied to him. He never lied to me. And the stuff that he told me about, like their traditions and customs, I'm like, yeah, it must have happened. Charlie told me it happened, therefore I have no reason to doubt it.
Oh, another question. I'm trying to remember. So, Chris, you were stalked when you were repairing the fence line. What do you think was stalking you?
Honestly,
Like, do you still think
don't.
you think it was a bear, or do you think it was maybe a Sasquatch? Like you said, you didn't
No, the
see
bears.
it.
I didn't. I don't think it was a bear. I don't think it was a bear because bears up there, bears pretty smart. Bears are like an oversized raccoon. They're very smart. And most bears, especially if they've been hunted before, they know that most people carry pew-pews and they know to stay away from them. Unless it's a young bear or an old crippled bear. But whatever it was smart enough to to keep the trees between me and it. So it was conscious of that. Because they knew I couldn't see 30 feet into the trees. And them trees were so thick that whenever I was riding through there, that whenever I got really creeped out, I ran across so many elk that I didn't know were there until they took off running.
Mm-hmm.
And that last one that I spooked was less than 5 feet from me.
Right.
And if it wasn't for my horse being bulletproof, head of buck showed out, and I mean, it'd have been a rodeo there for a little bit because I wasn't intending on walking back home. But it just, but whatever it was on both times was smart enough to keep the trees between me and it.
So, and like
Especially
most likely, then it was probably a Sasquatch, or maybe I don't know, a dog man. And speaking of dog man, what are your takes on that subject? And Joe, you can start.
For the dog man?
Hmm.
Well, if people said that they saw it, I believe it. I have never seen one, and I hope I never do.
Yes, I'm with you, Joe. I hope I never see one either. Chris?
I agree with what he said.
Yeah.
I've never seen one. I hope I don't.
Yes.
And that's one of them kind of deals that, yeah, I'm gonna agree with him what he said. Because
Anybody?
I know,
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I know people I know one person that said that they seen one, and
Mhm.
whenever I looked at them, I'm like, let me look at you. And they, by their body language and how they were acting, yeah, they seen something.
Yeah, people act differently when something scares the crap out of them, literally. Um, Now, both of you have had, I guess, a paranormal experience, right? You had, Joe, you had yours in that bunker. That's got to be an entity of some sort, not a hairy man, right? Is that how you're sort of
That's
feeling?
all.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. That's how I see it. This
And
thing was
Chris, I think
terrible.
Chris, you've had some as well, right?
Hmm.
I don't think you told the story
Yeah.
about the of the bed. I remember was it you that told that story about your father? Is that you,
Well,
Chris?
my dad won't talk about stuff like that. I mean,
Okay.
see, the house that I grew up in was an old house. I mean, it'd been built like 1880,
Mm-hmm.
and there'd been, man, we'd be watching TV, and you'd swear you'd see somebody walk beside the window. And every time you'd see it 1,000 times, you'd still get up and look because you didn't know if it was a neighbor going in the backyard looking for, my dad or my brother or myself, my mom, something like that. We'd get up, and we never talked about it. I mean, even though we had all seen it, we'd all see this person as the same person, but their color of shirt would change from a blue T-shirt to a gray T-shirt, and it was all like from back in the 80s or back from the 80s to the 70s type T-shirts,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd see them. You see them walk by, and I'm like, well, okay. And we'd all see it, but we never would be like, man, y'all see that shit? I mean, see that stuff? Sorry. We
That's
never
okay.
said it out loud, but we all thought it. And in 2003, I come back home. I was working. I come home for a personal reason, but anywho, I'd stayed the night with my mom and dad, so I get in the hotel room, and I was going to leave to go to work the next morning, bright and early. And I was on the phone with Sydney, my girlfriend, and I was telling her, what was going on. Told her, I said, I'm just going to stay put tonight. It's too late for me to go home. And I'm talking to her, and anytime I use my phone, I go outside to where I can hear the person, and they can hear me, and we're not interrupted. And I can see something out of the corner of my eye, and it's kind of a full moon, and I'm seeing this out of the corner of my eye. My brain's like, I'm talking to her, and I'm looking at this corner of my eye, and it's not registering. This shouldn't be here until it got into the light, and I seen what it was, and it scared me to the point I screamed like a little girl. And I covered 40 feet in about 3 jumps, made the hair on my head stand up. I screamed. I was white, spooked me to the core.
What
If
was
I
it?
had not it was a ghost of a little child.
Oh.
And And I did, and I screamed. I mean, I'll admit it. That scared the shit out of me. And I threw my phone at my little brother and said, "You talk to her." And I locked myself in the bathroom and I splashing water on my face, hyperventilating. I mean, all the color was gone out of me. I mean, I was white. And my dad jumps up and he's like, "What the hell's this?" And I told him. And he laughed about it. Okay, had a good laugh. Rucka. I didn't sleep that night because I'm like, man, that spooked me. Next morning, 4:30, I get up and I get dressed and I tell my folks, "Hey, look, I'm headed back. I'm headed back to work. Bye. See y'all next weekend or the weekend after." And I get in my car and I leave. I go back. I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna go back to Osage County where we don't have this kind of shit happen." And I told Sydney what had happened, and she's like, "I believe you." Well, my dad, he kind of like, "Yeah, you just seen something out of the corner of my eye." And I didn't find out till about a few years ago that within a month after me seeing that, my dad seen it. My dad seen it, and he told my mom, but he wouldn't tell me or my brother that he had seen it because we didn't want him to think he was, tripping or losing his mind. And he's like, "I must have inhaled some propane or something." I'm like, where would he? And I asked my mom, I'm like, "Where was he at?" And she told me. I'm like, "Yeah, no, he's gonna have to try that again." And he never told me that. He never told anybody. So my mom, he had seen that same exact thing about a month later. My dad, he just don't talk about stuff like that because I don't know. He's just one of those.
Yeah, I think some of the older folk, they don't. I guess by not speaking about it, you're not acknowledging that it's there, right? So they rather not talk about it. Um, so one interesting thing I've noticed, everyone that I've had on so far have always had either something has had both. They've had something either follow them that is not like an apparition, but more like a Sasquatch or a dog man or something like that. But they've also had instances where they're seeing ghosts. And again, both of you guys seem to have encountered similar stuff. And I'm curious as to why a person who has seen one thing is more than likely to see something else or have other strange encounters. But it seems to be one of the main things. I mean, everyone that I've had on so far have both either seen or had an audible to do with Sasquatch and have had paranormal experiences. And some have even seen UFOs. So it's kind of like they all kind of go together. Now, speaking of UFOs, have any of you guys seen any UFOs? Joe, you want to go first?
I have not. My dad saw one once. He actually pulled me out of the house so I could see it, but it was a long ways off, so I didn't really see much.
And Chris?
Oh yeah, many times, many times.
Do you want to elaborate on one of the instances?
Had so many of them, but the one that really sticks out on me, and the only reason why it sticks out in my head is I was in high school. I don't know what grade I was in. I was 10th, 11th grade, somewhere in there. I'm pretty sure it wasn't my senior year because I had my mind on other things besides spending time with my buddies my senior year. But anywho, and I had two of my buddies and my brother, but they'd come over and spend the night all the time. My house kind of like their second home, especially the older cousin of the two boys that was there that night. He was always at my house. Friday night, I mean, he'd get off the bus at our house. And I'm like, "Bub, your mom and dad," and I'll call them in a little bit. Okay. All right, whatever. But on this day here, we was going to go camping out at my mom and dad's pasture. And for some reason, they wanted to go walk on the road that runs in between my house and my mom and dad's house. And and it was kind of a full moon night, and we see something, start to notice something, some kind of light in the sky catches our eye. And we stopped and we looked. None of us had binoculars. This is before cell phones, any of that stuff. And we seen them, and it's like one would sparkle, flash, kind of like Morse code, trying to like communicate with each other. And it spooked the younger cousin to the point to where this is like 11:30 midnight, where we had to talk him out of calling his mom and dad to come and get me, because I mean it scared him. He's like, man, this creeps me out. I'm scared of this shit. Please, let's not talk about aliens. And I'm like, I'm not talking about aliens, but looky there. And he's like, I want to go home. I said, well, I don't know about calling your mom at this hour. I said, but we can go to the house. You feel all right in the house? Yeah. So we walked back to my mom and dad's house, walked in the back door, and every little bit he'd be like, hey, you don't think they're going to come in and get me, do you? I said, no, I don't think so. We got a barking dog. I think a barking dog would keep them at bay. But the next morning at like 6:30, he goes in there, gets on the phone and calls his mom. Mom, come and get me. I'm scared, Mama. I mean, and he told her what had happened, and she's like, oh no, it's okay, baby, all this stuff, and loaded him up and took him home. Cousin stayed, and he's like, I don't know what we seen, but by golly, I don't think it was aliens. That's kind of how we left it. I haven't talked to him about it since the night that happened, and that's been 20 something years ago. But I see him all the time in the mountains behind my house, all the time.
Hmm. So Joe, you mentioned that you saw something disappear. A log that could have been something. Do you want to elaborate on that one?
Sure. I was walking down this trail. I have to do some physical therapy, so I walk a lot. And I was walking from the trail from McCarthy, Alaska to the Root Glacier. And off to this right side, I was just not really paying attention to much, just kind of zoning. And I saw this really large black stump. Well, it was near a glacier area. And the thing that immediately caught my eye was there's no way a stump can be here because it wouldn't have time to grow because of the receding ice. So I stopped and looked at it, and I smoked. So I smoked a cigarette as I watched it. This thing opened its eyes. It was a stump that had golden eyes. And I didn't know what I was looking at, so I stepped forward and started walking towards it. And I kind of started tripping on brush, and I looked down, and when I looked up, it was gone. So I went around the area. I hung out 15 to 20 minutes looking around. There were no leaves disturbed. There was no bark taken off trees where something climbed up it. This thing just vanished. And then a few weeks have passed. I kept walking, kept walking the same trail. And I kept looking for the stump that disappeared. And as I walked up this trail on the right side, I saw a huge Sasquatch. It was 12 feet tall, and it was standing behind a spruce tree.
Wow.
And when I walked up close to it, and I didn't know what it was. It was a weird shadow behind the spruce tree, and it was twilight. It was a time of year where it doesn't get dark up here in Alaska, and I stood there and looked at it. And then when my brain figured out what it was, I just put up my right hand and I said, hello, big brother. And I turned and left. And I went back down to the glacier, did my regular walk. And then when I came up the same trail, I looked to the left and it was gone. So whatever it was, and it looked exactly like a giant Sasquatch. It wasn't 100% out behind the tree. but it probably had 40% of itself hidden, 60% of its body was exposed. And then that was in 2022. So this year I did the same trail walk all summer. And that that spruce tree that this thing had stood behind had been ripped out of the ground, and it appears like it was tossed towards the road. So
Interesting. And speaking of this year, so have you had anything gone on up there, like this summer?
yes, ma'am, I did. While I was out there, I walk a lot, obviously, and I'm walking on glacier moraine. And the reason I do that is it's on an even footing and it's better for my muscle development. So I'm walking out there on this glacier moraine this year, and there's nothing out there. It's like the moon, if you've ever seen a glacier before the ice. It's just, there's nothing there. It's all rocking.
No trees, no
There's
bushes.
nothing to hide behind. So I walk past this area and I look down in it because there's kind of a pond down there. And I kept going. I'm doing my walk, and I hear giggling and laughing from somewhere. And it was just the place I'd walked past. There was no way anybody was down there. And it sounds like Yupik, but different. I don't know how to explain it.
Sorry, what's
Uh,
Yupik?
Yupik. When you go out to like Nome or Dillingham, they speak Yupik out there. It's a native language.
Okay.
Eskimos. So I've heard that, and then I went way out one day, and I walked too far actually. So I was coming back, and I was really hurting. I mean, really hurting. And my brain was not on Sasquatch. It was more like, I just got to get out of here and get home. And I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm concentrating on hiking. And all of a sudden, in my head, I hear, "We will meet when you're ready." So I don't know who said that, but it was inside my head. And as crazy as it sounds, it was clear as a bell. And it was a man's voice.
Hmm. So, do you think this is the same one that you've sort of encountered throughout the years in Alaska?
I thought about that. I saw one in 2017, and then I saw it in 2022, another one, or maybe the same. But that thing was huge. So if they can grow, that seems like a lot of growth in a few years. No,
Oh,
I think it was just an old one that was watching the trail, had nothing to do with me. Just I happened to walk down the trail. And then I heard some yelling by the Copper River at one time. I can tell you that too if you want.
sure. Go ahead. We're
Oh, okay.
That's what
I'm
we're
down
here
by the Copper.
for, right, guys? In the
Yeah.
audience, we want to hear it all. Go ahead.
All right. So I camp alone a lot, weeks and weeks out there in remote Alaska, all alone. And I was doing the same thing near the Sheridan Glacier. So it's between a road out there, which is, it's remote, you have to fly out or take a ferry to get out there. And then I go down into the road 18 miles. I take a left, go back in the road, back in the woods about 5 miles. And that's where I like to camp. It's beautiful. It's a rainforest. So I'm out there camping, and it's so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. But I got a headlight on, and I'm reading a book with a fire pit all lit up, enjoying myself. And I hear crows, a lot of them, and they were ridiculously loud. But there are a lot of ravens in that area. There's two salmon streams I passed, and they were packed with salmon at that time. So there's food all over the place. And then I waited, and then I heard owls. And then I heard ravens again. I'm like, okay, the owls are enemies of the ravens, so yeah, of course it's going to do it. And then I went into coyotes. And one of these coyotes, or, and owls, there were different things going on, but it was actually an owl sound. It let off, and it got ridiculously loud. It was like a 600-pound owl. And then it went into this female scream and talking while it screamed. and then it stopped.
I don't think that was an owl.
No. And then I heard this other one. It sounded like a male. It's so dark you can't see anything at all. And it lights off to my left, and it is unbelievably loud. Shake your guts loud. And then it ends. And then between me and this mountain is a pond and a slope that goes up to kind of rock. And I don't go back there because I'm uncomfortable. But that whole area just started screaming. And I mean, it sounded like there were, no kidding, it was like 30 or 40 of them. It was just unbelievably loud. And then they'd take turns. And then there was a big one to my left. And he would talk, and I don't know what he said. And then he would laugh after the other one screamed. And there was one to my right, a big one, apparently a male, that would laugh too. And they would do this, demonic laugh, boom, boom, boom type thing. And they did it so often, and there was so many in the area that I thought, I should be terrified. But I'm actually laughing with these things with it. They're having fun. So, in my opinion, I stumbled upon something, had nothing to do with me. I was just in the area. So I realized I'm not going to get any sleep. So I put everything back in the truck and I went farther off road. And I went right next to the glacier because it's a clear area. And I went to sleep. No, I was going to go to sleep. So I get up and, have to relieve myself and then get back in the truck. And I fall asleep. No big deal. And then I wake up at about 2 a.m. and I hear these rocks pinging off the top of my truck. And as soon as I woke up, I'm like, oh, a friend of mine who was an old native from Minnesota, he said, if you ignore them, they'll go away. They're just bored. So they bounced rocks off my truck for a while, and I went back to sleep. And that was it. That was it for that area.
What do you guys think of these of Sasquatches having the capability of infrasound? Like, for instance, Joe, you're mentioning how they were so loud you can hear it kind of reverberating in your guts, in your stomach. Do you think they're capable of infrasound? We know there are other animals on this planet that can do it, but they're not an animal, so I guess that's why I'm asking the question.
Don't know. I could tell you they were loud enough when that big one lit off next to me. I don't know if you've been around explosions. I have. I was in the military, and there are times where it hits so hard, it feels like your bones are blowing out of your body, and then they snap back in. And that's what it sounded like, the first one that really went off. So I don't believe in it. I don't know about infrasound, but I can tell you they're really loud.
Chris, what do you think? Chris?
I don't know.
don't know?
Honestly don't know. I mean, I know that I've talked to zookeepers that said elephants and large cats can produce something that will distort your thinking.
Mm-hmm. Or paralyze you.
They'll paralyze you. And these are zookeepers who, the two that opened up to me about it works at the Tulsa Zoo. One of them does the pachyderms, and the other one does the big cats. Mm-hmm. And they both said the same thing. They said that that's the reason why they started using earbuds. They said there won't be anything playing in them, but there's just something about that will muffle it to where it doesn't affect you.
Oh, okay.
But both of them had told me, they said that they'd be thinking or be talking to themselves like a lot of people will do, or have a song stuck in their head or be planning out their day. And then there'll be like a hum. Like they said, whenever you hum to yourself, that feeling inside of your head, they said you'll feel that, but it's from the outside. And they said that the only thing that they could think of it being was the animals themselves. And then they mentioned it to their superiors, and they're like, yeah, there's literature about this. People who studied elephants in Africa out in the wild and in India said that they can emit some kind of sound that can distort your thinking. And they said the same thing with, for sure, tigers. They said possibly lions, but we know it for sure in tigers. And I'm like, that's. And he said that's how maybe that a tiger is so successful at hunting there at the end can project that, kind of distort that thinking for a few seconds, and that few seconds is all it needs to pounce. So there is that documented in animals. So
Sorry, I just got caught reading this. Brent was saying CWL. I remember reading about a whole town in Alaska that was abandoned due to extreme contacts with multiple Sasquatch. Is that a question, or you just sort of mentioning that to Chris?
Well, I'm not from Alaska, but the only thing I know about Alaska is that Fort Chatham, if I'm saying it correctly, was abandoned back in the 40s or 50s because of hairy man attacks.
Yeah, see,
I mean, they had found people dead, part of them missing, and they said, you know what, we'll just move. We'll just move.
Is that the town that was the cannery, or is
Yeah,
that
it
a
was a
different
cannery.
town? Okay.
No, it was a cannery, and because I just watched a deal about it the other day on TV or on Tubi, one of them too. And they said that there had been like heavy stuff moved, and they're like, man, you'd have to take 2 or 3, 4, 5 people to move this, and this stuff would be moved, and then they'd find people would disappear. Then whenever they would find the body, part of it had been missing or had been eaten on. And they just said, you know what, we'll just move this town, and they just abandoned it. Take
Now,
what you need and leave.
was there only one town that happened, like that sort of incident? And I'm going to ask you, Joe, because I know you're in Alaska. Or was there two? Because I keep on hearing two different names of a town, and I'm not sure if it's because they renamed the town after to something else, or what the case is. But what's your take on that, Joe?
Fort Lock was the town that was abandoned that the gentleman was talking about, Chris. And it was abandoned exactly why he said. People were getting ripped to pieces and found in the ocean or in the rivers that are running down to the ocean. And one of them got crushed by an object that was not possibly able to be moved by one human. So Port Chambers is right next to it, and that's why you're hearing the difference.
Gotcha. Okay, Port Chambers. Okay, somebody was telling me, somebody in the OC community was mentioning, who was it now? Was it Elizabeth? I think she was mentioning something about there's a show on television called something Alaska. I can't remember what it's called. But they talk about, they go to this town, I think, and they're doing some show on it. I haven't seen it, but I'm going to see if I can try and find that one.
I've seen that.
Good night, Toby. Night. Yes, much love and respect to you as well. Sorry, Toby's leaving us. So question for both of you. I don't know who wants to answer this one first, but since Joe, you've seen a Sasquatch, I'll let you go first. What's your take on the whole photo thing? Why we can't seem to get a nice clear shot of one? What's your take on that?
I don't believe that. I believe you can get a clear shot. I think you need to use an extreme telephoto lens, and apparently there are people that can get them. So they use, I have a C-Star S50, and what that thing is it's an astronomical camera. So you can look at the moon close up.
Oh, okay,
and I can set that thing and look half a mile away, and and see everything. So
now,
that's how they're doing it.
You're using a tripod.
Yes, ma'am. It's all computerized. It's very advanced. It's a smart camera.
I'm guessing it's expensive.
Yeah, not too terrible, but yeah.
Okay. And Chris?
I think a lot of times, even with everybody having a phone that takes pictures, you just don't think about it. Or it happens so quick that you don't have time to, grab your camera and unlock it and get to the camera portion of your phone and then hit the button.
Exactly.
La-
Yeah.
last year, I seen a deer, a nine, or not a nine, 8 point buck in my mom and dad's pasture. By the time I got my four-wheeler stopped and had my camera out, he was already halfway across the pasture. Still took a picture, and whenever I sent it to my dad, I'm like, believe it or not, there's an 8 point buck in this picture.
Hmm.
And he had to zoom in, and you could see the flag, but at that 3 seconds it took to get my phone, unlock it, and hit the camera button and take the picture. He had done halfway across halfway across the pasture. And if there's woods or any kind of thing that can be in the way, it's going to make it that much harder.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because people simply don't think about it, don't have time.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, a lot of times you're probably in shock, first of all, of what you're seeing. And the last thing you're going to think about is taking a camera out. And to your point, Joe, I think if you're going to try and capture one of these things, you're going to need a telephoto lens. Your cell phone's not going to do it unless it's standing 10 feet away from you. And you're going to need some sort of a tripod. If these things are as quick as they are, there's no way you're going to, catch one in time. Anyways, that's my take on that one. Um, Another question I have for you guys is, you know, why haven't we found a dead one anywhere out there? Or at least, that we know of.
You want me to answer?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I believe they're people and they're smart. So I don't know where they're putting these dead people, or if they're eating them, or if they're possibly made out of cartilage and they just completely dissolve. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think they bury them because I do believe they are people. But it's funny, recently I have heard, because what is that book I've been reading by, and if you guys haven't seen it, I've posted it in my community chat. I'm reading a book on Audible by a fellow by the name of Tom, what's your name again? Tom Lyons. And he's got a series called Living Among Bigfoot. And in that book, he talks about there's a bunch of different groups of them. There's a particular group that will eat their dead once they die. It's not like they kill them to eat them, but once they're dead, they will eat them. Yeah, so I found that kind of interesting. It's the first time I've heard of them eating their own, But yeah. So okay, and Chris, what's your thoughts on that one?
And then whenever you're out in the wild, critters die. Squirrels, rats will gnaw on bones for the minerals in them, and the natural world will dispose of a carcass real quick.
Mm.
So within, unless you find one that had just dropped, that just dropped dead an hour before, 6 months, there ain't gonna be no sign of it. There's coyotes, squirrels will chew on deer antler sheds and bones. Like here, people have an old cow that dies. They'll drag it off in the back 40, and within 6 months, it's gone.
Mm.
Coyotes, dogs, other critters will come in, gnaw on them. Buzzards eat them. Possums will eat them. Just
Yeah.
natural water take care of its own self.
Yeah. That's one of that one and the photo. Those two are some of the questions I get all the time. Why isn't there, a clear photo? And sometimes, you don't have the time of day to answer, but there are times that I do respond, and I pretty much said what I told you guys, and they still rebuttal it. It's like, I guess there's folks out there who just don't want to believe in anything or in this subject matter. But what I find very amazing is they keep on coming back. Why do you keep on coming back and listening to people's encounters if you don't believe that they exist? It doesn't make any sense. But that's just me. Do you guys have any questions for each other, Joe and Chris?
Chris, have you found any tracks? Can you hear me?
Chris?
Yeah, I've found tracks here. I mean, they've been seen here, but I didn't see none in Wyoming. But I didn't go look for them whenever I was in Wyoming. I didn't look for them while I was here. And there's one thing that I'd seen years ago. Man, I was maybe 13, 14, was out coon hunting with my dad and a few other old men, and we were coon hunting in an area about 15 miles due west of my house that I'm at right now. And they had just come in strip mining it for coal. And my dad's buddy is the one. This is at night, and we all had all the grown men had the proper coon hat or the coon hunter's equipment. All I had was a mag light and spare batteries in my pocket. And my dad's buddy seen this footprint first, and he's like, "Hey, y'all come over here and look at this." And it was kind of wet and rainy, and we're trying to get the dogs to where we can get back to the truck because we don't know what's about to happen. We don't know how bad it's going to start raining. Let's get the dogs, go back home, regroup, try again tomorrow night kind of deal. And I can't remember which one of the men it was, but they seen it first, and they stopped and they were shining it, and they said, "Look here." And I looked down, and there it was about a 16-inch long human looking foot. And there was another one because it was in like a little, they had done some dozer work, kind of like create like a berm. And it's like it stepped in the soft mud, then it stepped on the little 4 foot high little dozer pad that they had made and continued walking. Now we didn't try to track it down because we were trying to, locate dogs. So we seen that, and we all kind of like, well, maybe it's one of these big-footed loggers that we got around here. Chopped it up to where, hey, it's probably somebody playing a joke on the guys doing this logging because there are some pretty big-footed people in my community. And we just chopped it up. That okay, it's got to be one of them. Got the dogs, went back to the truck, and we never spoke of it again. The next time I seen the guy, I'm like, "What do you think that was?" And he's like, "Somebody playing a joke," and that's how it was. And we never spoke of it again. Just and I'm like, and now that I'm grown, and I'm like, I've done survived, enough stuff to where I don't care what people think. But I've seen them tracks, and I mean they were in Oklahoma, and I mean it was here in southeast Oklahoma, about 15 miles due west of my house. I can take you to that same exact location tomorrow morning in daylight. It's going to look a lot different than it did then because the trees had grown back, but I can take you right to that same exact spot tomorrow morning.
Joe, have you seen tracks?
I have. I saw one near a pond by the Cotton River. It was, way bigger than Lightfoot, but it wasn't massive. And then I saw one by this old town in Alaska. It actually was abandoned also, and it's called Katalla, Katalla. And I was getting prepped for a fishing guide out there. I was going to take some guys fishing, and I want to make sure the cabins are okay and find a fish and all that thing. So I'm running a river, and I stop and pull over and start walking. And it's in a muddy area, and I found little footprints that look like a toddler, and then medium footprints and this is in mud, and the medium ones, they went down fairly deep, and then I saw huge ones, and they were deeper than I could step for sure. So what I did is I squished them out because I had clients coming in, and I didn't want to freaking out about, you know, about footprints.
Yeah.
So that's all I've seen,
I've
and I don't
seen,
track them.
sorry, go ahead, finish off.
Oh, I'm not, I know how to track. I grew up out in the woods, but I don't track them. I don't look for Sasquatch. Uh, in my opinion, I think we like the same areas because I'm a photographer, and, if I get in an area to overwatch something, it's the same thing they're probably doing.
So I have seen prints twice, and it's always been only one print, which is really mind-boggling. And the first one, I wasn't the first to see it. Actually, I wasn't the first to see either of them, which is the funny thing. And for whatever reason, I never took pictures of it. Don't ask me why. I just didn't take pictures of it. But the first one was sort of on, it was on like between two parts of like the Canadian Shield, and in between was a like a muddy. Um, it was just muddy. It was like Mayish, I believe was a time frame. So whatever stepped there, you can see the top part of the foot, and you can't see the rest because it would have been on the Canadian Shield, and that would have dried. That part would have dried off. So all you saw was the big pad of the big toes, and you can see the mud squished between the toes and everything. And the other one was also in the mud, but it was on the side of a hill, and it was just one, and the footprint was trying to grip to go up, so you can see the toes dig in, and the rest of it just kind of like it must have slid because you can see the heel slide down a bit. Again, I didn't take a picture. I even asked my friend if she had taken a picture, and she didn't. So I don't know why. That's twice I've seen prints now, and both times just one, and never took a picture. Don't don't know why, but never did.
It scared the crap out of me because it was fresh, and I actually have a picture of it. But I left. I didn't want to hang out with that thing there.
Yeah, no. And mind you, that sounds like it was a family. Little one, a medium-sized one, and then a
Oh,
large one.
yeah, this is a different one. This is the one I walked out of a pond.
Oh,
And,
oh,
I knew it was fresh, but like yours, it was one print and then he walked on the moss.
oh,
It
okay.
was rainforest.
Yeah, I never really looked around to see if there were rocks nearby that the other foot would have been on, because there was just one. It doesn't make sense when you're just seeing one. But the area that had a lot of the shield, I mean, there's explanations why you don't see another one because there's a lot of that section, that trail is on the Canadian Shield. It's the Bruce Peninsula. If you're from Ontario, the Bruce Peninsula starts at Niagara Falls and it goes all the way up to Tobermory. And so, and within that section, then there's a lot of cave systems. So you're on a shield, and it's that's why you wouldn't really find a lot of prints in that particular spot. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
where I saw, not far from where I saw them, the ones in down by the copper, there are 6 caves, and even the locals, almost all of them, don't know about it. And I've always wanted to get up into those caves. One's or three of them are on the Copper River, and the Copper River is extremely dangerous. There's very few people that run it. And there's a reason, it's called the man killer. So up there on the left, allegedly natives had burned these things out. They were called devil monkeys. They weren't regular Sasquatch.
Okay.
And they were in these, well, they were killing people, and the natives got them in this cave, and they burned them, basically burned them all down, smoked them out, killed them all. And allegedly, they didn't really get them all. They thought they did, and they're back. So,
And that's in Alaska.
yes, ma'am, it's next to the Copper River in Alaska. And there are tales, native tales about
I'm going to look them up.
these creatures. Yeah, Copper River devil monkeys is what they are. Sounds stupid, but it's a translation.
Yeah,
So,
there's a similar story in, I think it's Arizona. They were called the red something. They had red hair. I can't remember the name, what they actually called them. But they were also killed because they went into a cave and they did burn them. Same thing. They put a like brush and they set it on fire. Try to remember the name of the Native Americans. I can't remember their
The
names.
red-headed giants.
Yes, that one, the red-headed giants, but I can't remember the tribe.
Okay, that happened in Utah.
Oh, I thought that was in
That,
Arizona. Is Utah? Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
the story I'm familiar with is in Utah, and the natives were scared to death of them giants because they were known to eat people.
Mm.
So they got them in that cave, lit it on fire, and burned them out. There's the story that I'm familiar with. I don't remember what they're called.
That's probably them. That is probably them. Yeah, so it's interesting. You kind of hear the same thing, different parts of, of North America, one in Alaska and one further south. Um, let's see. What other questions do we have? Chris, you have any questions for Joe?
How close did you get to that one Sasquatch, Joe?
what was that?
How close did you get to that one?
Uh, Both of them, I was probably 35, 40 yards. Pretty dang close, too close than I wanted.
Any smell?
No, none at all.
So do you think that's like a one-off, or is that like a defense mechanism, like a warning sign? Like, what are your thoughts on the smell?
I believe it's a warning.
Okay,
Get a little too close, and they let stuff go.
they let you
And
know.
the yelling and throwing rocks and all that. It just seems like they're trying to drive you away. I don't know many people. I don't know. I haven't heard a story where some friend got killed by them. Ever, no, no deaths. Other than natives saying they were snatching women and children.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah. Yeah, and who knows, maybe there is some truth to why some people disappear. Um, maybe some are taking them. I'd hate to think that, but
Yeah,
maybe.
other people, I believe. And like up here in Alaska, I think we have the record of the amount of people that just vanished. And part of the reason is, our terrain is just brutal. You can slip into a crevasse, never be found, walk into a cave, never come back out. I mean,
Exactly.
get
Exactly.
eaten by a bear, try to cross a river and freeze to death, get swept away. There's so many ways to die here.
Yeah. So I have a question from Tina G. I don't know who wants to answer it. The question is, have you ever popped off any shots to scare one away, not directly at them, but perhaps in the air?
No.
Okay. Sitka, Nevada.
Ithaca is what they're called. It is in Nevada. Sorry, it wasn't Utah. It's Nevada.
So, okay. And I said Arizona, but yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
That's all pretty close. So yeah. All right. Um, Tom, is this a question? Let me see. The Alaskan Sasquatch seems to be the most brutal in the Americas. Um, I don't know. I guess by if you're thinking of Port Luck or Port Chamber, I would say yes. But I guess there's also other parts like where'd you say this was? Nevada, and
Uh-huh.
where they've had, some disgruntled ones, but that was way back in the 1896, 18 something. I can't remember the last digits. I'd have to look it up again. I know it was a long time ago. Um, Tina G says the ones in North Carolina are pretty mean. I don't
Yeah.
know. I haven't been to North Carolina. Wow, pretty mean. So Tina, it sounds like you have a story as well. Let's see. What other questions do I have? Did we ever we kind of crossed over into who have seen UFOs, but I believe Joe you have, Chris you haven't. And I think I asked, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I asked whether you feel there was a connection. Did I ask that question already?
Yeah.
I did. Okay. Uh,
About a 3 foot tall guy I've seen.
sorry? You seen
Oh, I
a
got a. Yeah, we were chatting on a live thing, and you said, "Hey, go look at this website because you thought it might be an alien," and it's exactly correct. The second story on that website you sent me to is
uh-huh.
exactly what I saw.
Really?
Yes, they're 3 feet tall. The one I saw, they're 3 feet tall approximately. It's in a black robe or a cloak, and it vibrates back and forth like 6 inches to the left, 6 inches to the right, so fast it kind of makes you sick to
Dizzy.
look at.
Yeah, yeah. It makes you dizzy. Um,
Yeah, super fast, and they don't last long.
I'm
The
trying
last
to
one I saw here in this condo,
I'm trying to remember what? Sorry?
the
You s-
last one I saw was here in the condo. I
Oh.
woke up, I felt watched, and I woke up and looked over in the bathroom. This thing's watching me, and I'm like, well, whatever, I'm going back to sleep. And I did.
Huh. Um, Tina G, I don't know if you remember when Angie was on. She's in North Carolina, and she did have a little bit of a disgruntled sort of start, but then it was because of her actions that they were kind of being aggressive, and then they changed when she corrected her behavior. I don't know if you remember that stream. If not, you should take a look at it. Um, Joe, I don't remember the link I sent you. When did I send this to you? I got to go back and take a look.
Yeah, I don't remember. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a link you sent me. I actually said it live, and that's what I went there.
Oh,
It was a YouTube channel.
okay, okay. Yeah, I don't recall. I'll have to go back and take a look at that. Um, yeah, I've never seen any little green guys or any little guys at all. I have seen some weird stuff in the sky that I can't explain, and not to say that it's a UFO, but I just can't explain it. It's just it's not a plane, it's not a helicopter, so I don't know what else it is. It's not a drone. So yeah, and I wasn't the only one that witnessed it. It was my son and my nephew who also witnessed it, and it was just 2 summers ago. We were out in the back and looking up one night, sitting out 12 o'clock. It was a nice dark night. Not all nights are dark. Some nights are pretty light, where there's a lot of light pollution. And I see this with the naked eye. I was looking south. It looked to be, I don't know. I'm just gonna sort of show you. It was about that long, but it was like a spiral of like red, like a red, like think of something spinning fast and it had red lights all around it. That's what it looked like. and it went to the east, and then it came back to the west and did that sort of back and forth twice or three times. And we all saw it. We couldn't figure out what it was. It was definitely not a plane. There's no wings that you can see. Like when you see a plane flying towards you, you can kind of see the outline of the plane. Even if it's dark out, you can make out because they have the red and the green lights off to the side, so you can kind of make out it's a plane. No plane, no tail on it, nothing. Yeah, don't know what it is. I'm guessing it's a UFO, but well, it is. It's unidentified, but I don't know, of what origin it is. So yeah. Um, what else
You
do we
asked me
have?
if I saw a UFO.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, well, actually, I did, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I was coming from Glen Allen, Alaska, towards Anchorage, and it was probably in the afternoon. And I saw this giant white, looked like a telephone pole heading straight down towards Earth. And it had this long, well, it wasn't long, it was like almost like vapor or possibly silk that was, making this weird motion as it fell. And then it went behind a tree or behind a mountain. I didn't see it. I didn't see where it landed. I just kept going. I don't know what it was.
Could that have been maybe like a meteorite? A meteor coming down? I don't know.
Well, it was so big. It was painted white, and it was like as long as a telephone pole or bigger.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, I was in the Air Force, and I've seen just about every bomb damn made, and it was not a bomb. So,
Cool. Pretty cool stuff. Chris, you have a story I remember about one that your girlfriend at the time saw when she was coming home from work. Do you remember that one that you told us? The black
Uh,
children,
oh, the
black-eyed,
black-eyed
the
children.
black-eyed children. Yeah. Do you wanna
Yeah,
you wanna share that one?
that right. That was and that was whenever I was living in Osage County. Sydney, she was a trauma nurse. You know, she wasn't an idiot. She wasn't like most of the girls I've dated. She wasn't loose or silly or any of that stuff. She had a good head on her shoulders, and I'm didn't know what was going on. She had called and she said, "My phone's about to die, but I'm going to stop at this mom and pop grocery store. I'm going to get us some fried chicken for supper." So that sounds good with me. Said it's kind of rainy. Drive safe. There's idiots out on the road. Okay, no big deal. And I'm going to be going to Kansas, so I'm looking at the Kansas map because this is before I had a GPS. So I'm having to like trace out to where I'm going to, and try to memorize the map the best I could. So I'm looking at this map, studying it for an hour, and here she come. She come in, and I could tell by the way that she was walking that she had seen something that upset her, and I assumed it an idiot on the road. And she come in, and she's like, "Where's your crown?" She never asked me where my crown was. She didn't mind that I drank, but she just hardly ever would ask for anything to drink. Well, she popped off and, poured her a real tall glass of Crown, downed it like an old pro, kind of coughed, and she's like, "Listen to this." I'm like, "Do tell." Because I thought, idiot on the road. She said, "Okay," went to the grocery store, called it by name. She said, "I got, no instances," went in, got the chicken, walked out to the car. And she said, got in the car, locked the door, and she said, "I hear a little tap on the driver's side glass." She rolled her window down just enough for her to speak to these people, to these two kids. And they're like, "Can we borrow your phone?" She's like, "It's dead. Died. Sorry. Don't have a car charger." She said, "It's raining." And they're like, "Can we please borrow your phone?" "No, it's dead." And she's like, "Will you give us a ride home?" She's like, "I'm not." She said, "I'm the one about to give two kids a ride home. A cop pull me over, and them kids say I tried kidnapping them. She's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she said she wasn't really looking at them. She just trying to get them to kind of leave because they creeped her out. And she reached and grabbed two $1 bills and told them, they said, she should go in there, get change, and use the payphone to call your mom. We don't know her number. And she's like, why do you want to borrow my phone? She said, that's whenever I noticed that their eyes were black. She said, I don't mean their pupils were big like they had been huffing pain or doing some kind of drug. She said there was no color in their eyes. It was black. So what'd you do then? She said, I noped it the hell out of there and left as quick as I could. She said, I drove straight here. She said, it creeped me out. I'm like, that does sound creepy. And I hadn't heard of black-eyed kids at this point. Never heard of anything like this. And I'm, be like, okay, I believed her. But I'm like, I didn't know what to say to her to get her to, get her to calm down or put the thought out of her head. I just told her, go take a shower and have you a couple more drinks of Crown. And after you get done with the Crown, throw down on this fried chicken. I said, well, put a movie on. And I said, we'll fall asleep like we always do in front of the TV. Make sure the doors are locked. And I said, I promise you, no little black-eyed children are going to get in the house.
Yeah.
And chopped it up like that. And I, the next day we were at her mom and dad's, or her dad and stepmom's, and she told her dad, and her dad pulled out a little double action 22 Magnum pocket pistol, and he said, keep this in your car where you can get to it close. He said, only leave one story to tell, and that be your story. He said, I don't want to have to get revenge on somebody that did you harm, but here, take this. You know how to use it. Only use it as a last resort. And that kind of resolved that, and she never had anything else happen to her like that as far as when me and her was together. But she never went back to that grocery store ever again. Even whenever I was with her in the daytime, she's like, I'm not going back. We'll go to the other grocery store.
What time of night was it, Chris?
Man, it was about this time of year to where it'd be dark at like 4:30. Plus, it was wet and rainy.
Right.
So it could have been, I want to say 5, 6, somewhere in there. Whenever she had the encounter, took her about an hour to get home from there. So I want to say, between 5 and 6. And with it being raining like that, most people didn't care about no fried chicken from the store. They had already made it home, and they wasn't going to brave the cold rain. And it wasn't until the next weekend I mentioned it to the fellow who was riding with me to Kansas. I just mentioned it to him, and he's like, man, he said on the science or on the Sci-Fi Channel, he said, they just did a deal about this. And they said, yeah. They said, this is a legit deal that not a lot of people are talking about, but this has been documented, the black-eyed children. I'm like, really? And he was into that kind of thing. And so he's telling me everything that he knows. And I'm like, huh. I said, I've seen some freaky stuff out on the road and stuff I can't explain, but I've never encountered anything like that. So we go to Kansas. We do our thing in Kansas, come back home, and the next weekend I go with Ryan, Sydney's dad. We go we go squirrel hunting in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. And coming back from Okmulgee, we stopped at a Love's gas station. I go into the store. I was going to stand out there and talk to him, and he's one of those, I don't need adult supervision. Go about your business while I'm pumping gas. So I go in the store, get my mom a shot glass and get me something to drink. And I stand in line, and I know he's going to talk to his buddy who is the manager. He was in the Army together. So I know that he wants to talk to him so I can take my sweet time. But I get in line to pay for my stuff, And I look and I can see him, and he like looking over his shoulder like something, he just seen something that wasn't quite right. And he's a man that didn't spook easy. But he's looking over his shoulder like, man, something ain't right. So I, pay for my stuff. He comes in, pays for his gas. And we, sit in a booth, and he talks to his buddy, and I sit in another booth where they can talk and not be interrupted. They talk for about 30 minutes or so, get in the truck, and we leave. And it's about 20 minutes, and he's like looking at me, giving me those side eye, and I'm like, what is it, Ryan? Spit it out. And he's like, man, I just saw your doppelganger. I'm like, what? He said, I just seen an identical copy of you there at the gas station. I'm like, bullshit. I said, you messing with me? He said, no. He said, I seen you walk into the store. Then he said, a minute later, you walked out. Walked out of the doors, walked around the corner, and just disappeared. Like I was standing in line, I got me something to drink, and my mama a shot glass. I said, I don't want to walk from here back home. I said, I ain't got it in me to walk that far. I'm not good at hitchhiking. He said, man, dude, he said, I'll tell you what, he said, this is weird shit. He said, it was you. It was you. No, it wasn't. He said, I know it wasn't you, but he said, by God, it was you. And he said, you could tell it freaked him out. Fast forward to last year ago in September, and that's whenever I had my first stroke. And I'm in the hospital in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And my mom calls me, and I'm about to have some tests ran to where they can pinpoint exactly what had happened to me. I said, okay, this is, I said, you know what room number I'm in? If I'm not in, it's because I'm having these tests ran. But the test shouldn't take no more than, 20 minutes or so. So then then they'll come in and tell me what the results are. So I just told them, make yourself comfortable as possible. It's a hospital room. And I come in, and then whenever they come in, I took the test, and whenever I got back, my mom and dad was in my room. And my dad was visually like looking at me, and he's like, you hadn't left this hospital? I'm like, no. I said, no. I said, that didn't release me to go anywhere. Why? They're like, dude, just seen you at the Walmart. I'm like, what Walmart? He's the one down the road. So I've been right here in this room, and unless they're running tests on me. He said, yeah. He said, it walked like you, had your little shuffle. He said, but what was odd was you smoking a cigarette. I'm like, I don't smoke. So I dip snuff and chew tobacco. I said, but I don't smoke. You know that. So I know, but he said, it still looked like you. Huh. I said, that's odd. I looked at my mom, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, this is my parents. And they'll be like, the two people who ought to be able to pick me out of a lineup amongst anybody. And my mom's like, yeah. I'm like, it wasn't me. I got an alibi. I said, I've been right here in this hospital room unless they go run tests on me. And so that's three people who have ran across my doppelganger. And that one was real close with me being in the proximity, and I didn't see nobody that even resembled me.
Very
I'm like,
creepy.
that's messed up. I'm like, that's messed up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I've never had that happen to me. Pretty strange.
Mm.
Very strange.
But there was a picture sent to me from an old girlfriend that she had called me, and she's like, where you at? I told her where I was at. She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm having lunch with my new girlfriend. What are you doing? She's like, I'm standing behind you in line. I want a picture. Send me a picture. And she did send me a picture. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, holy crap. That dude looks like a carbon copy of me. Holy schmoly. I'm like, this is creepy, because it had on that person had on the same shirt that I had on. Had on the same colored pants. But I was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, having lunch with my new girlfriend, and she was in Kansas at a McDonald's, and I'm like, this is creepy. So my poor little pea brain can't handle this. And I showed my picture to my current girlfriend, and she's like, do you have a brother?
A
Yeah, I
twin?
have a brother. But I said, you know him. I said, you've been around him several times. I said, that don't look like my little brother. So that don't look like Kevin. No, I said, there's only two of us.
Hmm.
I said, I don't know. I cannot explain that. But I'm like, holy crap. The dude was about 50 pounds heavier than me. But other than that, he could have went and committed a crime, and I'd have been,
Pinned for it. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, Tina G says Skinwalker.
It's
Yeah,
something.
I mean, I have heard of doppelgangers before, but yeah, that's pretty interesting. Um, any questions from the audience at all for Chris or Joe? Oh, and Joe, thank you so much for becoming a member. I did shout you out there in the communities tab there. Much appreciated. Any questions for these fellas? They sound pretty quiet out there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up. So before we close off here, I do want to say a big thank you to Chris and to Joe for coming on. This was quite enjoyable. We were supposed to have a third, but I had not heard back from HairForce1. So yeah, this turned out actually it was perfect because we didn't have too many people. And you guys were just fabulous, I have to say. So um, I want to thank you guys for coming on. This was very enjoyable and very informative. And yeah, maybe we can do stuff like this going on in the future. Just hearing, stories from people in the OC community. I know somebody mentioned earlier, who was it? Prep Ford, I think it was, says something about, what was it you said, Prep? Oh, he said, I rarely speak about my encounter to avoid ridicule. Well, that's why we're here, right? We're here to share our experiences without being ridiculed. So yeah, so I want to thank you guys, Joe and Chris. If you guys can just stay on for a little bit longer, we're going to just say goodbye to these folks here. If you guys want to say bye, and I'm gonna end the stream. I want you guys to have a fabulous weekend. And yeah, stay tuned for this episode coming up on Sunday. So thank you all so very much. Have a pleasant evening. Chris and Joe, you want to say good night to everybody?
Yes, thank you for having me on, and I hope everybody's having a good evening.
Chris?
Yes, thanks for having me, and I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and do something fun.
Exactly. That's coming up around the corner. Oh boy, I almost forgot. Christmas is just around the corner. We have 10 days, I think, right? Yep, 10 days. All right. So thank you guys. Good night, everybody. It's been a pleasure, and we will chat with you guys soon. So let me just send these guys off, and then if you guys will just stay on for a little bit longer, that would be fabulous. So let's go ahead and do this.